You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 87. There is nothing more exciting than when you achieve a big goal or a dream, am I right? But what do you do when life changes your circumstances? Today, we're going to go behind the scenes to not only hear what it's like creating a product-based business that focuses on organization, which is one of my favorite things, but also what it's like pivoting rather quickly and bravely from a big goal that you achieved to adapt to a new landscape. So join me and my guest as we take a deep dive into her journey. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Marissa, founder and creative force behind STIL, which offers organizational products to inspire all women to take charge of their busy days and buzzing social lives and make room for the little moments that are just for them. Marissa has successfully launched 2 Kickstarter campaigns and has won a 20 on the Rise award in the designers category, which is amazing, such a great accomplishment. So welcome, Marissa. I'm just so honored to have you as my guest, and I'm so excited to learn all about your story and advice. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you.
First of all, hello, and thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like you gave me a pretty in-depth introduction there, but I'm originally from Switzerland. I moved to Canada when I was a teenager, when I was 14. So I've been living here for quite a long time. I learned English when I moved to Canada. So I always like to think that that's a pretty big accomplishment, and sometimes also still comes out when I have a few drinks or so. My accent will pop out and people will be surprised by it. But yeah, so I started my career in design. I went to SFU. I did my undergrad there, and really, I initially was in business school, and then switched to communications, and then from there, I got this really big interest in design. So I actually ended up doing my undergrad at SFU, and then continuing on to Langara, where I did the communication arts and design program, where you're really focused on, branding and advertising design, and specifically also design for print. And that's how I got introduced to kind of like the print world and like designing for, I guess, like product. So that's how I got into designing, and also, I guess, the world of, printed materials, even though at the time I think a lot of people were saying that print is dead. But I have always been a planner lover and planner user since I was really young. And because I was going to school 3 nights a week and I had a full-time job, I needed a really good planner for myself. So I decided to create it because I had the skills to do it. So I hope that's a good introduction. And I hope that that's I guess it probably leads into some of the questions you had for me.
Definitely. I love that. That's such a great kind of tidbit into your journey really leading up to STIL.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that you mentioned the written word is dead or paper is dead. And I feel like that's so, so false. For me, I'm one of those people that absolutely needs to have things written down. My to-do list, my planner, I like to see it. I like to feel it. I like to write in it. I feel like for me, the digital ones, like I do create my goals and whatnot, my high level ones and my plans in an Excel workbook. But when it comes to actually like the day to day, I need to have it written. I need to see it in front of me.
For sure. And I think that, a lot of people resonate with that. especially because we live in such a digital world nowadays where, everything is a notification and everything is like a social media post or whatever. So, having something physically in front of you that you can write in and then you can sit down is almost like in itself like a meditation of some kind, where you sit down to journal, or you're actually physically meditating and then maybe journaling after. And then also just like writing down your to-do list feels like not only good, but it's actually like scientifically proven to reduce stress and for you to actually retain the information a lot better. So, if you're actually physically writing down your tasks, you feel more at ease and you're more likely to get them done, you're more productive, and you don't feel like you're constantly forgetting something.
I totally agree. It's such a great experience, like meditation and all that type of stuff, journaling. I actually enjoy the process of sitting down and writing in my planner, my to-do list, my things that I need to get done for the week or whatnot. It's enjoyable. It's not like the same as putting it into an online document.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So I want to start at the beginning. So how did the idea of STIL come to be?
So, very similar to what I was saying earlier about just kind of like my own personal journey, I guess, going to school 3 nights a week and having to work full time in order to sustain that. So I had, my work tasks, my meetings, my projects, and my deadlines and things like that. But then I also had my schoolwork and all of my assignments and all of my presentations and all of my actual like design work that I had to do for both school and my job. So I really needed a planner that I knew that I could rely on and that I knew was going to help me kind of, I guess, not only compartmentalize both of these different things that I had going on, but also make sure that I was actually getting them done and that I was successful in that. So I remember going to Indigo and getting a planner like, so many of us do, and I think I spent about $35 or whatever. And I just very quickly ended up realizing that this wasn't doing anything for me. It looked nice, but I didn't feel good about using it. It wasn't helping me. It wasn't helping me stay productive. And it wasn't something that I felt super proud to use every day and open up and feel like I was like, oh yeah, like it's a new day. Like I feel good about this. I feel like I have everything together. So I started doing some research into, what were sort of like the higher tiered planners, what was out there in terms of like planners, I guess, for young professional women that, had a job and maybe had a side gig, or had a job and maybe had kids or whatever it may be. I wanted something that was like had a little bit more substance. And what I quickly ended up realizing was that a lot of the sort of like higher tiered planners were targeting young moms. And I think that that was great. But at the time, I was 22. I didn't have kids, so I didn't need, the meal planning, the scheduling for kids, and like the calendars and all the different things that you need to sort of like do mom things. So I was mostly just looking for something that I felt good about carrying around with me. And so I decided I was like, well, I go to design school. I know how to make books. So I just created my own planner book based on the way that my own mind prefers to kind of like organize my day. And so that's kind of like how the idea really started, was through just one planner that I created for myself to stay on top of my tasks.
Amazing. So what was the experience like starting your business? Like, when did you realize, okay, you know what, actually, this planner is fantastic. Maybe I should turn this into a business?
I actually ended up making, I would say maybe a handful or 10 of them for Christmas gifts for some friends and family, like my sister, my friends, her friends kind of thing. Just to more so as like, this is a great gift. You know what I mean? Like who doesn't want to have a new planner for Christmas, like for the new year to like get their shit together?
Mm-hmm.
And then the feedback that I was getting was so positive that I actually decided like, oh, like maybe I should make a couple more, and like maybe I should try selling them. And I ended up doing actually quite well on Etsy. And so I was selling through there for a while. But, Etsy has its own sort of, I guess, issues with fees and things like that. So I started looking into what it would look like to get an e-com store. I decided to go with Shopify. And at that point, I just decided on a whim to quit my full-time job and just go all in to this business that I had no idea if it was going to succeed or not, which still to this day sounds a little bit ridiculous. And I don't really know exactly what was going through my mind, but I did it anyway. So I quit my job, and I remember telling my boss that I was like going off on my own, and he was awful. He was awful, awful, awful to work with. So he actually kind of like, it pushed me more into the direction of like, I just want to do my own thing, because I feel like I have, my own vision, my own style of design, and I don't need to be listening to this idiot, telling me how I should be doing things. Like, I feel like I know how to do that myself. So after I quit my job, I took on a lot of contract work. So I was doing, websites and branding projects and photography for different clients while I was kind of like working on building this planner business. But I've been self-sustaining now for, I guess, almost 7 years of me just hustling away, both like at the business and, my own personal brand. And we're at a point now where STIL is, doing incredibly well. And we have so many more products, and, we have a small team and things like that. So it really kind of, it takes, I think what people don't realize is that it really does take a very long time to build a successful business. It isn't necessarily something that happens overnight, unless you have an influx of cash put into your business where you have the ability to test, and it's okay for you to lose money doing certain things. But that was not an option for me. I've always been self-sustaining. I've never taken on investment, never done any of that. So it was like sink or swim for me all the time. And so it's been a slow climb, but nonetheless, it's been amazing, and I've learned a lot.
I love that. Now, I have some questions that I kind of want to unpack from everything that you just said. So when you started the business, did you just kind of go with the whim? Did you start by like creating a business plan and figuring all of these things out before, or did you just kind of go with the flow, create your account for Shopify and just kind of start selling and kind of go as you went?
I've never had a business plan in my life.
Okay.
I've never created a business plan, never had one. I remember at one point I was trying to apply for like a futurepreneur loan, and they were like, "We require a business plan." I've never done one. I've never had one. I've never followed one. I've only ever followed my gut and knowing what felt right to me. And that's basically how I've lived, all the way through my 20s, is just, feeling things out, making mistakes, making massive mistakes, and learning from them.
I love that. So many people, when they're wanting to start a business, they feel like they need to know it all before they even start. But really, this is just another prime example that no, you don't have to have it all figured out. No, you don't have to have a business plan already finalized before you start.
I still feel like I don't know anything. So
You just learn as you go, right? Like there's nothing wrong with that. And that's not going to stop you from being successful.
For sure. I think it does take a certain type of person, though. I think that not everyone feels comfortable diving into the deep end and then learning how to swim as you're drowning.
Mm-hmm.
But there is something to be said of my ability to have been able to do that for the last couple of years. And in all honesty, if I can do it, anyone can do it.
I love that. Now, taking the plunge and going full time. I would love to know how you felt about that. Did you have any fears? How did you rise above them and just kind of go full throttle?
So I did definitely have, I was scared, but I think for me, the number one thing that was always in my head was like, well, I have a good education. I know that I'm a good designer. I do have past experience in this industry. If all fails, I can always get a job. Like, why would I not take the risk right now? I have no kids. I live by myself. I have zero responsibilities. And it's like, this is basically the time to fuck up or succeed.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I love that. Now, for your business to start seeing success, how long did it take for you to start seeing those sales and, profits and whatnot? And what did you do to celebrate all of the wins, all of the accomplishments that you were doing?
A lot of champagne. Um, that's always kind of been a constant for me. But no, when it came to, I guess, actually, selling and profiting and things like that, it does take some time. And I think, when it comes to, going back to like the business plan thing, what I do really think is very, very important when you're running a business is knowing your numbers and knowing where you're spending your money and how much is actually coming in and how much of that is actually profit. So, for a long time, I was kind of just constantly playing catch up and constantly feeling like, okay, like I've sold this and like now I have to get more. But like, I never really looked back and was like, like where is that money actually going and how much of that am I actually is like going into my pocket and what are my margins and like what do I actually want my ideal margins to be, what percent am I trying to hit and like how can I do that. And so I think that instead of focusing on having a business plan, I think what's really important is like focusing on what are the numbers of your business, like what is your your average order value and like how do you want to increase that. So if it's say $50 and you want to push that up to $70, like what can you do to really hit that number. And maybe that $70 threshold comes in at you offering free shipping at $70, so people are more likely to spend that $70 and then get free shipping. So these are the types of things I think that are way more important than having like necessarily like a structure to your business. I think knowing your numbers is key.
That's such great advice. And a lot of people are fearful of looking at their numbers, diving into the finance aspects and whatnot. But that sets you up with a great foundation for moving your business forward and keeping it successful.
For sure. And constantly just like going through it with a fine tooth comb and never just ignoring it. Because if you're just sitting there running a business and you don't know your numbers, you're not running a business. You're not really doing anything. You're just, waiting for something to basically take you down because you don't actually know where you're at.
That's such great advice. Now, obviously your planners, they have rave reviews, and I know how you created your first planner, but as your business grew and evolved, did you make changes to your planner to kind of meet the needs of your community? And how did you determine what those changes would need to be?
So we've always had a pretty dedicated and close following on Instagram, since sort of like the early days. So we've always had a very close relationship with the people. I mean, certain people have been buying the planner since 2015. It's been a long time and they've been with me for a long time. And it's changed, like on the inside, it's changed a little bit structurally, but it's pretty much almost exactly the same as it was when it comes to the structure since day one. We've just kind of like, I've grown as a designer. I kind of grew with my style and I've gotten better at certain things. So that has changed. And then, every year we try to, with our core, so our core annual dated, January to December planner, we create new covers every single year. So, and then we get our customers to vote on them. And that's always been like such a fun experience in terms of like getting them involved and making them a part of the process.
I remember seeing posts on that and you asking people's opinions on really what they preferred. And I loved seeing them because that's definitely a great way to engage your communities, to take them along with you on the journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, for those that are wanting to start a product-based business, I would love to hear, what the process is like from idea to production. What are the key things that you kind of need to do to create a product and launch it?
So I think that it really depends on the industry. We do, every time we try to, we're thinking of a new product idea, we really kind of actually run it by our community first to be like, is this something you actually want to buy? Or is this just a dumb idea? So I think being able to test your market or do pre-orders is a really great way to kind of test out to see if something is or isn't going to work.
That's a great idea. Now, what else is involved? Like, since you do your own design, obviously you don't have to hire another designer to get involved there, but how did you go about like selecting the materials and
So when it comes to actually creating the physical product and all the materials and things like that, for me, I went to school for design and print, so I know exactly what the print and pre-press process is like. I know, I know everything about color. I know everything about Pantones. I know everything about what's actually involved in terms of like finishings and foiling and plates and die cuts and things like that. So for me, like, this is what I went to school for. So I'm very well trained in that area. So when I was looking into like outsourcing and actually manufacturing some of the product, I already knew exactly what I was talking about, and I think that really helps. I think you do have to be a little bit of an expert when it comes to when you're creating a product, just because someone can really give you a run for your money if you don't know what you're talking about, and they're just upselling you on things you don't actually need.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. That's such great advice. Definitely know what you're getting into, because I've seen it firsthand where people have taken advantage because they've seen the lack of knowledge that the individual has had.
Yeah.
And it's sad, right? Like, you definitely don't want to have those experiences as a new business owner that's trying to launch a product. It really
God, no.
sours the taste in your mouth,
Oh yeah,
right?
and then you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. So you do have to you do have to kind of know your shit a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Now, as a planner, I want to know, are you a goal setter?
So I'm not necessarily goal setter in terms of like the traditional goals. I do have sort of like my annual kind of like themes of things that I try to achieve, but I find that people really overdo it with goal setting, and they end up setting these big goals and they never end up achieving them, and then everybody is just like disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I have my weekly goals, I have my daily goals, and then I have sort of like my quarterly goals as well. So I don't actually set goals annually. I kind of set them in increments that I feel like are way more achievable.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with your quarterly goals, how do you plan it out? How do you create an action plan in order to make sure that you're getting them done? Do you break them down in reverse and then kind of determine what the timeline is for all of those micro goals?
So we actually have a planner, a quarterly planner. It's called our Get It Done planner, and it focuses heavily on sort of like goals and ritual setting. And it actually allows you to check in with your sort of like the goals that you're setting for each month or for each quarter. And it allows you to check in with that on a weekly basis, which I think is really truly the best way to kind of like make sure that you are sticking to your guns, is for you to have a weekly check-in to be like, what did you do this week to kind of work towards this goal that you set for yourself for the quarter? What are you doing in week 6? What are you doing in week 8, kind of thing? And like, what does it look like when you've actually achieved that? What is that reward like? What does that look like for you? So I love that planner specifically for sort of like setting goals quarterly and allowing you to have those kind of checkpoints, because oftentimes you have your goal setting in the beginning of the month and then you just don't ever look at it again. But with this planner, it allows you to kind of like, it just prompts you to think about it again, which I think is important.
That sounds amazing. I definitely need to check that one out. I didn't notice that there was one specific to goal setting.
Yeah, it's our Get It Done planner.
I will definitely check that out. Now, as a busy entrepreneur who I am sure has tons on her plate, I would love to know how you set yourself up for success daily. So, what are your morning routine? What is your evening routine? Do you have things that you do during the day, like rituals that kind of help you reset and stay focused?
So it's funny because I feel like, 8 months ago, when you would have asked me this question, it would have been a lot different. But now that I'm, mostly working from home and I don't go to the office anymore, my routine has really changed, but also in actually quite a positive way as well. I get up quite early. I've always been an early riser. So, I'm up at like 6 or 6:30. I used to work out first thing in the morning, but now I usually will make myself water with some lemon. I might have a little bit of breakfast, or I'll make a tea. I start sort of like working. I look at my inbox quickly just to make sure that there's no fires burning. But I really do try not to touch my inbox in the morning, because It is a task that I can do, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when my mind is starting to fade a little bit. So I try to actually focus on bigger sort of like design projects or, manufacturing projects and things like that I'm working on in the morning, which are sort of like bigger projects. Versus, and then leaving, your social media and emails and things like that for the afternoon. I do try to do a workout at some point during the day, usually at lunch. I try to go for a bike ride, or I do some yoga, or, I do a little workout here in the apartment and just kind of like get my body moving. And then for sort of like after work, I have been cooking a ton. I'm actually really getting into cooking a lot more. Again, we haven't been to a restaurant since March, so I've been doing most of the cooking. We do takeouts, on like a Friday night, but I really enjoy the act of cooking because I find it very therapeutic and very meditative. And it's something that I actually really enjoy. And that allows me to kind of like wind down my day a little bit. And then usually after dinner, I do things like editing video content or answering emails and things like that. And I'll usually watch a little bit of TV, but I am always in bed by 10 o'clock and I have a pretty extensive face care routine.
Your days are quite planned. I love it.
They're very planned, yes.
I love that you mentioned your love for cooking now, which I think so many people are experiencing,
for
like
sure.
myself. That's like one of my favorite things now is like turning on some music and like actually getting in the kitchen and like creating a new meal that you haven't had before and then sitting down and actually eating it. It's like the best experience. And I've been to a couple of restaurants recently where it was safe, and I came out of it. I was like, I actually prefer eating at home and cooking now. It's not the same.
Oh yeah, 100%. I know. It's also like you discover new flavors and you discover new ways of like you being able to, I guess, maybe explore a new talent that you didn't even know that you had.
It's so much fun. Now, I would love to chat about the retail store that you opened and then closed, but I'd love to talk about, any key learnings that you had from the experience of actually opening up a store and what that looked like for you.
For sure. It was a really, really fun experience. I would definitely do it again, in the sense that it was a good learning experience for me. I am really big into decorating and, creating experiences. So for me, that was a really fun experience. The reason why we decided to open the store was because we wanted to create, a more of a sort of an interactive customer experience. We wanted to do, in-person monogramming. We wanted to do workshops. We wanted to do things like, panels and stuff like that, all around like productivity and, focusing on being your best self. So we created this space that was really wonderful. We had coffee, we had Thursday, Fridays, we were doing wine, and just like kind of like bringing women together to kind of like socialize and get to know each other and also talk about different ways that they're staying organized and staying on top of their tasks. So that's kind of the reason why we wanted to create sort of like an extension to the brand, to have sort of like a more social and sort of like interactive part to it. But we've always been online and we've always really focused on our e-commerce. So this was the reason why we created this was more so to have like an extension of it, if that makes sense.
Totally. I love that. Now, before I dive into that, I do have some other questions because I want to dive into those first before I talk about these things that you are wanting to do through your actual physical store and how that's going to move forward in your business now. Mm-hmm. So having this big goal of opening this store and then having to say goodbye to that goal, basically like closing down the store and whatnot and walking away from that huge goal that you had for yourself. How did you navigate making that difficult decision? How did you deal with all the emotions that most likely came along with that decision?
So I was definitely, it was a crappy situation to be in. Mm-hmm. The thing that I really tried to remind myself was that I couldn't have prevented this. It wasn't due to something that I did wrong, but it was just due to something that was completely out of my control. And the most important thing was for me to get out of it as soon as possible so that I could continue focusing on the bigger picture, which is our e-com store, and focusing all of my energy on that. Because I think I went through a lot of stress constantly, like every day waking up and realizing that retail space was costing me money.
Mhm.
It's not cheap to pay rent in Gastown for a storefront. So that was something I think that really affected my mind space and my ability to actually do work, because I felt like it was just like draining me and it was this dark cloud like hanging over my head. So I hired a lawyer who actually got all of this done very quickly, and we were out within 3 weeks. And everything was done. So it ended up costing me quite a bit of money to, pay for the lawyer's fees, and I lost my deposit and things like that, which is obviously can be painful, but it would have been a lot more painful if I had just stayed and been like, well, we'll just hope, for things to get better. But from the sense that I was getting and just like looking at the way the world was going, it just didn't make sense.
I thought it was so brave. When I saw that, I was like, wow.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was definitely like it was a tough decision for sure, but I've always been a very much like a realistic person, and I just kind of took my emotion out of it and looked at it in true form and realized the world is not going in this direction anymore. I don't need to either. So, let's just call it for what it is and move on.
Yeah, definitely. Did you have to take some time to reset following making that decision to kind of get your mindset into a better place to now focus where you wanted to move still in?
I mean, the the really positive thing was our sales were up like crazy. So I had no choice but to throw myself back into the business that I was already running, and realizing that, wow, like there's all these people that are at home right now working, and they have no planner to help them. And so, it was a matter of like me waking up every day and being like, how can I be relevant to the people that are working at home right now to make their lives easier? So it was a really easy transition for me, because I had this whole other focus that I could just jump on and like jump into.
I love that. Now, obviously, you have experience pivoting very freaking quickly due to a pandemic and bouncing back very quickly and thriving with your business. So, I would love to hear what advice you would have for anybody else that has a business that is trying to navigate their business during a pandemic.
So, I mean, the other thing is like it really, really depends on the industry.
Mhm.
Here's the thing: is like if I was selling bathing suits, I think it would have been a lot different of an experience. But because I was selling, office accessories and productivity tools, it was exactly what people needed during this time, because they were at home and they were looking for ways to stay productive and make sure that they could keep their jobs. So I came in at a very good time, and it was just kind of like this it worked out so perfectly. I still am so It's just so funny how this whole thing happened. Like I made this huge mistake with this store, but on the other side of things, everyone was kind of like looking for the exact product that I was selling. So I feel like in some ways we got very lucky in that way. But when it comes to navigating a business during a pandemic in general, I think it's important that you don't make any long-term plans, because things can change literally from day to day or even hour to hour, and you just don't know. You have to be able to make changes, like when you wake up in the morning and be like, okay, the world is different today. What can we do to make sure that we stay relevant based on the information that we have right now? So I think some of the mistakes I think people were making in terms of working through this pandemic was, we're gonna just like replan everything, and then you'd wake up the next day and be like, wow, all of that is just now completely irrelevant. So in working alongside my coworker very, very closely, we had calls every single morning, and we're like, okay, what's the world doing today? What do we need to do? How do we need to approach them? What do we need to say to them? And it was just like literally a day by day sort of like strategy and ways that we could kind of like get creative with selling. And so one of the ways was just creating work kits. So coming out with like work from home kits that were really easy for people to buy, where you get a notebook, a planner, and maybe a desk mat or something like that, where you were able to set up your home office and make it feel good. And so we were creating a few different like video content around that. And I think that kind of like not focusing on the long term, but basically just like looking at just taking it day by day.
That's such great advice because COVID is not going anywhere.
Nope.
Obviously, numbers are increasing again, unfortunately for us.
Yeah.
So obviously, we're not out of the woods yet. So I think that is such great advice to take it day
Yeah,
by day
definitely.
and to reevaluate based on each day and how things are going.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with everything that you wanted to do with the retail store, your workshops, things like that to get more social, are you still going to be taking those into your business and maybe moving them to an online format?
We have talked about it. It is something that I think we'll probably end up doing into 2021, just because right now our bandwidth is like pretty thin in terms of just like new products that we have coming out, and then focusing on, soon enough it will be Christmas. So as soon as we get into September, we're going to be focusing on Black Friday and like running through all of that strategy. So it'll be something that we look at for the new year, just because much of this year has been so like day by day, month by month, so there hasn't really been too much of like a long-term strategy other than the products that we had already planned to create, which we are on schedule to do. But this is something that we want to do more virtually for our Club STIL members, and we'll be doing that in 2021.
Amazing. Now, I'm not sure if you can give any little hints as to what types of products you have scheduled to come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up my calendar. We just did our sort of like planning meeting yesterday. We're coming out with a line of swag, so we're doing some still swag. That is something that I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So we have that coming out for pre-order later this month. Same with our academic planner. So back to school will be September. So we're going to be doing lots of things around that, around our new planner for, the school year. Even though a lot of kids, I think, and a lot of people are going to be doing school from home, but you're still going to need a planner to do all of your schoolwork. We
Mhm.
have a brand new 18-month planner coming out. We did a collaboration with Bumble last year for an 18-month planner, and it did really, really well. So we created an all black version, and we're actually also coming out with a beige version as well. So it'll have a beige cover, which will be really great. And then we are relaunching our Moderna wallet. I don't know if you've seen our sort of like travel wallet, everyday wallet. People have been asking about this for a pretty long time. So we've got that coming. And then, yeah, we're going to be getting into 2021. We've got a few things lined up for that. So that's as far as we've planned so far. We planned into October. So everything after that we're going to be doing next month.
That's amazing. Lots on the go for still,
Yeah.
that's for sure. Now, I'd love to get personal with you, and I would love to learn what self love means to you and what your practice looks like to nurture that relationship you have with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but in 2017, I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Mhm.
So that has really like redefined my relationship with my body and myself, and also my business. And I think that, I used to be, I mean, this was back when I was in my 20s. I used to feel like I was so resilient that I could do anything and nothing would ever touch me and nothing would ever happen to me. And I could never get sick and I could drink as much as I want and, never go to the gym. And that is just like not the reality. So for me, when I got my diagnosis, I made a huge shift in my business and myself. And I really, working out every day wasn't something that I was doing before, but is something that I know is really good for me and I know will keep me alive and healthy and well enough to actually run my business. So I think that, I think it can be defined so differently by so many people. For me, self love means I continue to have as much of my health as I can for as long as I can.
Amazing. Now, obviously, that's not something easy to live with. Some days can be worse than others. So, what do you do on those days where it's just you're having a tough day, physically, emotionally, mentally?
I cry a lot. No, I just like I get very frustrated actually with my body sometimes, especially in the summer, because I get a lot of joint pain. I have trouble walking. I can't, I can't do certain things, or my leg isn't working or whatever it may be, and I get so frustrated. And it's kind of this like little reminder, like, hey, you're not fully whole. So
Mhm.
I get frustrated in that way, but I thankfully have a very supportive partner in my life who encourages me to, rise above it and, get up and keep going. So I do have those bad days, but thankfully I have someone there that kind of like supports me through the bad times.
Amazing. Well, you've accomplished an incredible amount of things, and the business you've created is amazing. So you should be so proud of everything that you've done and you continue to do, even though you might be limited on some days dealing with some health concerns.
Thank you. Yes.
That's amazing. So I have some rapid fire questions from the community that I'd love to run by you.
Mm-hmm.
First one is, what is your favorite way to unwind and reset?
So I do love a good bath. It's a little harder to take baths in the summer because it just feels wrong in some
Yes.
way. But I do love a good bath. Actually, for my 30th birthday, Arthur got me one of those, like, it's like a bath caddy where you can like put your wine glass and your iPad and you can like watch TV in your bath and like have your snacks and everything. This has been like my dream to have one of those. So I haven't even gotten to use it yet because it's been so hot, but I do love a good bath. I have lots of bath bombs and salts, and I usually turn on my diffuser. I have a face steamer. So like I've got everything.
Holy crap. That sounds amazing.
It's pretty great.
Do you have a favorite bath salt that you use, or?
I actually really like the Lush bath bombs, and
Yes.
I cut them in half because I don't usually feel like I need a whole one, so you get 2 baths out of one.
That's a good idea. I never
Kind
thought
of a
of doing
random
that.
tip, I know. I did this on my I did a post on my story not too long ago, and a few people were like, "Oh, I've never thought to do that."
That's brilliant.
Yeah, you get 2 baths out of one bomb.
That's awesome. I love it. I'm going to have to do that next time.
Yeah, because they end up being so rich that you're like, oh, this feels like a waste. Like, they're so like, if you can have the same experience basically twice.
That's perfect. I've always felt like the bath was like way too much of the product.
Exactly. I know. And it ends up like, I don't know, it stains your tub and like there's just like so much bath bomb. And so, yeah, you can kind of dilute it a little bit.
That's a great idea. Now, the second one is, what is your favorite STIL product? Aside from the planner, what's your first one?
My belt bag. I use my belt bag every single day wherever I go. I don't ever bring anything else anywhere. I always have my belt bag with my little zipper pouch with all of my cards in it, and that's all I use every single day. And I've been using it now for a year and a half. And it's actually the sample that we got. I don't even have a real version. I still use the sample. And I love it.
Is this on your website?
Yeah, it's called the Expose Belt Bag.
Okay, I'm going to check that out.
It's the best. It's the absolute best. I have the clear one. And every time I have it with me, someone's always like, oh, like, where did you get that? It's awesome. I absolutely love it.
That's awesome. All right. Third one is, what do you love most about being an entrepreneur, running your own business?
I think what I love most is like what we're going through right now. The fact that I have job security as long as I keep working. Like there is no one that can fire me really, unless I decide to quit doing what I'm doing. I think there's something really valuable about working for yourself during, this time, because you can make your own schedule. I can work from home very easily, and I can go as fast or as slow as I want.
There's so much freedom in running your own
Mm-hmm.
business. I love it. Now, what is your best tip on how to plan your daily to-do list?
Keep it to a maximum of 3 big tasks and just do that. If you have time to do other things after that, you can add little small things to your to-do list, but try to stick to 3 big things, cross those off first, and then deal with the rest.
That's perfect advice. I always say 3 things. And
yeah.
I always tell people, like, if at the end of the day, you only accomplished 3 things and you felt like you achieved everything you needed to that day and you left the day feeling super successful, what would those 3 things need to be?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, if anybody wants to learn more about you, shop your products, where can they connect with you? Where do you hang out the most?
So we are pretty active on Instagram, and you can find us there at STIL Classics, STIL with 1 L. And then same thing with our website is also stilclassics.com with 1 L. And we have a YouTube channel as well that we're a lot more active on now. But I would say Instagram is probably the place to reach us the best.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Marissa, for sharing your entrepreneurial journey and for giving us such great advice on how we can adjust to changes that life can bring on that could be unexpected. I know so many are going to benefit from hearing your experience and your advice.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.